Welcome back to the Now Morning Show at 7:33 a.m. in Trinidad and Tobago. And our next conversation is something that is critical, not just for us here, but in the region. Joining us this morning is Richie Bansraj, Gender and Youth Development Advocate, to focus on some of the critical issues when it comes to boys and men. Good morning and welcome.
Good morning. Pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
It's a pleasure to have you with us on the show this morning. Thank you so much for joining us. Before we get really into some of the heavier stuff in this conversation, what first inspired you to become an advocate for men and boys' well-being?
Very good question, actually, because I've been in government, I've been working in the system with vulnerable people, men and women, boys and girls, throughout my entire life for over 10 years,
okay.
right? So packing some age, right? So for that period of time, I was doing all of the work and I realized that there are a lot of systems in place for women, because women and girls are very vulnerable in society. Yes, we know that. But it tends to come to a point where the men and boys hardly have resources available to them, even through the ministries and stuff like that. So my main goal is to work with persons like Dr. Jerome T. Luxing to advance the development and also create safety nets for the men and boys in Trinidad and Tobago, as well as the region, as well as internationally. So we have been doing that. So it is a passion, because I have too many times I've seen men and boys suffer, and I'm still seeing them suffer. And when men and boys suffer, who else suffers?
Yeah,
we do. Women and girls.
Yeah. It's a trickle-down effect. It's
Correct.
Something that we do need to pay attention to. From your experience, let's just say a decade of experience, what would you say are some of the most overlooked issues that are faced today by men and boys?
Right. Suicide, depression, anxiety. Men's mental health is often overlooked in Trinidad and Tobago, as well as the entire world, right? But recently we have started doing a lot more promotion for men's mental health. I've started to see International Men's Day get a little more recognition, which is the 19th of November. We also kickstarted the International Day for the elimination of violence against men and boys, because men and boys are also victims of these forms of violence, which leads to depression, anxiety, suicide, right? And there's also World Day of the Boy Child, which is on the 16th of May. Now, boys, we've seen it in the schools and all these things. They are dying by suicide.
Yeah.
Why is this? So we need to find ways to address these gaps and create social safety nets for these vulnerable men and boys in society.
You know, it's not often, I know it's something that is happening more now, but let's just say growing up then, you didn't necessarily hear the word victim and a man or a boy or mental health and depression in the same sentence, which really was indicative of our culture then. Have you seen a cultural shift as also the world is starting to embrace and understand this?
Very slowly.
Yeah.
Very, very slowly. So, good point. But the thing is, culture is one of the hardest things to change. It takes time, and it takes effort, and it takes resources. Sometimes in Trinidad and Tobago, we lack in the resources. There's only a few of us men that are really advocates for these kind of things, you know. And sometimes one wants to go this direction, one wants to go direction. But we need to work together as a team to end gender-based violence against men and boys as well, and steer us in the right direction, and change the culture, and change this thing called toxic masculinity. It exists. The patriarchy exists. And the patriarchy in itself is a system that is created where men supposed to have the power, right? Men are the ones seen as the power. But that puts down other men as well, because men want power and they step down on the other men in society. So,
Why do you think that some of these issues don't necessarily get more public attention?
Well, it is a historical thing from hundreds of years ago, where women and girls tend to be the focus. Let me give you an example. The Titanic sinking. Who have to exit the ship first?
Women and children.
Women and children, right? But what about the men as well? What about just saying everybody exit at the same time? Now, that's a controversial statement, right? There's a very controversial statement that I'm saying there. But that is part of what I'm trying to explain. The vulnerabilities that, yes, women and girls they have their issues that they go through. And it is often highlighted because we as men see that, men and women see that how the issues that women and girls go through are serious, very serious, and we need to address it. But at the same time, the men tend to not even focus on their own issues because it is not masculine to see about their own issues and address their own issues, or talk about the issues, or cry, or show emotion. They don't want to do that.
Yeah. Now, listening to you, one of the things that I'm really guessing is, they have this whole thing, chicken and egg, which one comes first? And we always say, okay, we're going to look at our children and this is where we're going to start, which, to be fair, is necessary,
Correct.
given, as you mentioned, our school system and unfortunate suicide rates. But then we also speak about men being leaders and also being able to find that space to express that emotion and communicate it to the younger generation. So how do we marry the two, and what can we do as individuals to really start that change?
Right, mentorship. Mentorship is the key word that I will always try to advise persons to do. Mentorship and safe spaces for our men and boys, as well as for our children. Women and girls as well need to be part of this. So it's men and women. We are not just operating in silos. The men can't just fix this whole men's issues by seeing about it themselves. They need to incorporate the women and girls as well. And the same thing with women and girls, their gender-based violence issues. They need to incorporate the men as well, because we all live in society together. And now when it regards to the children and raising the children and developing society, we need mentorship. Now, parents are not always mentors,
Yeah.
Parents are not always mentors. Parents are not always right. Let me say that. So we need mentors in this space who could guide youth into the right direction so that they know what they should be doing in life. We call it positive youth development, asset-based positive youth development, where we focus on the strengths of youth and develop them in that sense.
Now, mentorship and education, many will say do go hand in hand. There are different types of education, but let's speak about what we know as our standard education system. If there is this educational shift, do you think that it will assist in a while, I can't say instantaneously, but eventually bringing that mindset shift to our nation?
Yes, but that takes time. Yeah. That takes time because teachers need to understand that. I really appreciate teachers, but they need to understand that and some of them, if not most of them, understand this. They are not just teachers. Yeah. They are not just ticking a box. This is an academic thing. They're not just doing that. They are teaching and youth development. They are youth development professionals. Yeah. They are holistically raising young people. So they need to understand that they have a real impact. Because I'm sure you could remember one teacher that you liked in secondary school.
Of course.
Everybody here could remember that, right? And that person would have had positive impact on us. And sometimes it might have had a negative impact on us, right? So teachers have significant impact. So that entire academic system, we need to involve, with the teachers themselves, we need to involve actual training for them in order so it wouldn't be just academics, like a maths teacher or a science teacher ticking a box. You have to be holistically developing. And also you could really know maths, but it's how you teach the maths. Because other people may not understand how you understand it. So you have to understand the dynamics of youth.
It's very important. And I think, if anything, it's really this ongoing conversation again, because we see society evolve, but of course, humans evolve as well. And so every single time you may think, all right, well, I know what I'm doing. No, something new comes to change it. Yes. Now, one of the things that we just touched on would have been parenting as well, education. But if we can go to parenting from the perspective, we always hear it's a narrative, I'll dare say, we see on social media when it comes to the father. Yeah. And men and boys. For you, how does that translate into everyday life?
So raising a child is not just a woman thing and it's not just a man thing. It's a team effort again, just like with everything else, and involving the father into the dynamic needs to be there. If the father cannot be there, I recommend that there needs to be, and we focus on the men's issues, right? I recommend that they have a male mentor in this space. If it is a son. If it is a woman, if it is a girl, she can have a woman mentor. If it is that she doesn't have a mother in that scenario. But most of the time, who does get the custody of the children? Mother. So most of the time, who is lacking in the family household? The father, right? So we need to have more male mentors. But that brings the issue. We need to have more men willing to volunteer their time to address these issues that young people face within their own communities. Yeah. So you need to volunteer. Like me, I volunteer a lot. It is not just something, to me, it is not just about getting money or getting this or that. It's about what impact I could have at the end of the day. Because I am here, when you die and leave this earth, people are looking at how much money you have, whatever, watch how much impact you had on people.
That's one of the most important things, really, because we're taking care of future generations. Right. So we definitely need to be mindful of that. In light of that, I know you would have sort of dropped in some of the recommendations or things that we can do. But in your mind, what would be one of the top recommendations for Trinidad and Tobago to ensure that, let's say, 5 years from now, we have started a shift?
That's a big question. That's a big thing. So firstly, we must commemorate these days that I would have mentioned, that I represent with Dr. Jerome Tiloxing. Firstly, we need to actually have those days recognized in the United Nations calendar.
Yeah.
Do you know that International Men's Day is not recognized in the UN calendar? Why is this? Isn't there issues that are faced by men and boys as well? So why are these days not recognized? International Women's Day is, but I understand the women have their issues, but men need to have their day as well too.
Yeah.
Right? So that is one instance of it. So first things first, we commemorate these days. The International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Men and Boys, the 31st of January. International Men's Day, which is the 19th of November. And also World Day of the Boy Child, which is the 16th of May. We need to commemorate all of these days. Then we can start a trickle-down effect where businesses start to see it now. Because, businesses will say, what is that for we?
Yep.
They'll say, what is that for we? But if you recognize men and boys, who is your customers? Not men and boys, as well as women and girls. So if you see that you're doing things for the men and boys, and you're doing things for the women and girls in their time, you're getting your traction. So yeah, that is what I would say. So start to recognize the days first, start with a social media campaign, also advocate for creating safe spaces for men and boys. I just have to be a few people that you trust, to talk to about your issues. And I want to encourage men to show their emotions, and also it is okay to cry. It is okay to create a safe space and talk about your issues. You don't have to go to the bar and drink all the time and talk like in that setting. You can have a safe space where you can talk about your issues.
Well, Richie, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Thanks. I hope we have you back again soon, because I feel like we could definitely talk about this a lot more.
Sure, yes. Thank you very much for having me.
It's a pleasure for having you here on the show. Richie Bansraj, Gender and Youth Development Advocate, with us this morning on the Now Morning Show, speaking about critical issues that we need to pay keen attention to, not just as a nation, but as a world. Stay tuned. We'll be back right after this break.